The real experts sweat to strip everything down to bare essentials, like Colin Chapman, who designed the Lotus, which won this year's World Championship.
Well, one of the basic problems with a racing car is to save weight wherever possible, and also to build the smallest possible car which will carry all the fuel that you need. It suddenly occurred to me one day when I was having lunch that it might be possible to use the fuel tanks as a basic structural element in the car itself, mainly to save weight. And what I did was to build the whole of the structure of the motor car from the centre line downwards, and from the front axle centre line right beyond the driver, beyond the engine, and back to the back axle, build all this structure as a petrol tank, and allow that to take all the normal loads taken by the chassis. This formed two long boxes, in effect, from front to rear of the car, running down each side of the car, with the engine sitting in the rear portion here, and the driver sitting in between these boxes with his legs down in the middle there, and the whole of these boxes were full of petrol. And the skin of these petrol tanks was allowed to take all the normal loads taken by the chassis frame, which meant that I could do without the normal tubular steel structure that took all the loads. Now this gave a weight saving of about 80 pounds. It also made the car smaller in cross-sectional area because there was less wasted volume, and it also made the car considerably stiffer. And these three items together offered a material performance advantage over what had hitherto been conventional racing car construction.
If a car can be a thing of beauty, perhaps even a work of art, and not just a machine on wheels, the credit must go to Pininfarina more than any other single man.
Put on your red dress, baby. Lord, we go.
All over Italy there are concours d'élégance where cars are discussed and admired as if they were film stars or beauty queens.
Put on your red dress, baby. Lord, we go.
It's the association between Farina bodies and Ferrari engineering that has set a new standard for the world's motor industry. This close relationship with materials is the root of Italian design. Sabadini, the friend of Farina's who supplies him with components, is a prosperous businessman, yet still works in the metal spinning shop with his own hands. And out of the sweat and labor of the workshop have grown some of the most elegant and graceful cars in the world. When Farina people touch their cars, it's as if they were caressing the body of a beautiful woman. The Italians' appreciation of cars is very close to their appreciation of women. And Farina, who has keenly appreciated both all his life, often talks of one in terms of the other.
My father used to say that Giulietta, still now, is like an 18-year-old girl. It's true, it's like a young girl.
I'm pretty sure you're gonna knock him dead.
World Championship was Jack Brabham's in every way. Top driver in the top car, designed by Brabham himself. 40-year-old Australian, he's known as the old man of the track, won 4 Grand Prix in a row to have the title stitched up by early August. Brabham, winner of the world title back in 1959 and 60, is the first man to win it more than twice since the great Fangio. And the man who built his own motor car and in it became world motor racing champion for the 3rd time, Jack Brabham. Jack, I'm sorry about the sort of 40-year-old bit. I didn't really write that bit in the script. You know, you're getting a little bit venerable now, are you? You're feeling your years just a little bit?
I'm just getting into my stride.
But the other boys aren't starting to call you sir yet, are they?
No, not quite, actually.
Jack, obviously it's been a very special year for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been very, very successful indeed, yes.
Having done all those things, Jack, you've got to drive the thing, and after all, it's a young man's game, isn't it? I mean, how have you taken this season? All the travel, intense competition, you know, the feeling that you're within grasp of the title. It must have been a great strain for you.
Well, if you do anything long enough, you become better at it, you see.
Jack Brabham, delighted to have you with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to horse racing.
Do you think there will be enough 3-litre cars to make the new formula a proposition in 1966?
I think that is going to be the problem, actually. I think this time next year, which everybody should be ready for Monaco, I feel that there'll only be about 4 to 6 competitive 3-litre cars ready for the starting line. And I think the only way out of it is to extend the existing formula for at least another year until everybody's ready.
One of motor racing's big success stories this year wasn't about a driver, but an engine. The V8 Ford engine in the new Lotus 49, driven by Jim Clark and Graham Hill. Built in less than 6 months, it came first to the Dutch Grand Prix in June, untried and almost untested. Straight away, it broke records in practice, but it made history in the race when Clark whipped the Lotus into the lead soon after the start and stayed there to the end, setting a new lap record into the bargain. A win first time out isn't unique, but it gave Ford plenty to write home to Detroit about. The Ferodo Gold Trophy, motor racing's premier award, was presented to the designer of the Ford Grand Prix engine, the 34-year-old engineer Keith Duckworth from Northampton, whose remarkable engines also won every race in the Formula 2 Championship. In 1967, Duckworth's engine made Chapman's Lotus the fastest car ever in Grand Prix motor racing. With improvements and development scheduled for next year, it's likely to be even faster and even more successful in 1968.
It's an absolutely perfect replica of a Lotus Ford, the Formula 1 car that won the Dutch Grand Prix in 1967. And then every single detail of the original car has been built into this absolutely superb model. Now, everything on this works. The gear lever works. There are 5 gears, of course, and so does the steering wheel. And if I turn it, you can see there it's also turning the front wheels, and the turning circle that it gives is absolutely accurate. Quite marvellous. You're looking straight down the back now where the engine is at the rear, and of course it's a 3-litre V8. Well, as I said, it's really the most superb model I've ever seen. If you're wondering who is lucky enough to own it, well, it really is somebody who deserves to own it. He's earned it. It's Mr. Colin Chapman, who designed and built the Formula 1 car that won this year's World Championship, the Lotus Formula 1 Type 49.
And this is the actual Lotus that was built specially to take part in this year's World Championship Series. Now, take a look at this. It's a beautiful piece of engineering. Here you've got 4 air intakes for the fuel injectors, and it's just the same, in fact, as the model Peter was showing you just then. The only difference is that this car, or this engine, can develop 400 brake horsepower at 9,000 revs per minute, which means that the car can do nearly 200 miles an hour.
But even at home, Chapman doesn't get away from cars.
The technical man par excellence, he hasn't really got many interests outside the technical. He keeps fit, is weight conscious, but he's always designing something.
What's his contribution to motor racing?
Original thinking, and which is very unusual. I mean, that's most things that have been done before. And of course his design and his speed of getting things done, and of course his energy and drive and personality. You know, one can number quite a few things, but I think original thinking in motor racing, more or less setting the pace of design improvement and progress in motor racing.
You all have your share of good times and you have your share of your bad times, and they're roughly in the ratio of 18 to 1.
I should think so. Yeah, if you can get it on time. Otherwise? Well, I don't know whether we're going to. Yes, we might. We've got 10 minutes. Yeah. Well, have a go. See if you can get it back on in time. Well, you're about half a second slower than Rin and Stewart at the moment. Why don't you just do one run? Just do one run, see what it's like.
The aerofoil is designed to force the car down on the road to help it corner. But Chapman and Hill had a run of transmission failures. Were these the result of new strains imposed by the inverted wing? There's perpetual danger in all this speed and experiment. Everything is stressed to the limit, is run to the edge of safety. Hill's troubles were nothing to those of the other Lotus driver at Rouen. Jackie Oliver had a monumental crash and his car was completely torn to pieces. He had a miraculous escape.
You can see where the skid marks are up there.
And then what do you know? You were going backwards suddenly?
Well, it moved funnily across the road towards the right. And then it just spun. It started to go backwards, but it didn't spin completely, it only went halfway. And then started to go backwards, and then it went the whole turn again. And next thing I saw was the wall here.
You hit the wall, is that what stopped you?
Well, it stopped me, yeah, quite enough, but I bounced off and ended up this way and then jumped out.
Any idea at all, Mr. Chapman, what might have caused it? I haven't a clue at the moment. It's very early days to say. We'll have to have a look and see if anything, you know, if we can see anything obvious.
Oliver was all right, but the agony for a designer like Chapman is that things do go wrong.
I always get a little nervous, yes. I always hope it's all going to stay together. You know, there's so many things that can go wrong with a racing car that the unusual one really is the one that finishes rather than the one that doesn't.
Don't think the engine's quite warm. I'll just have one more try.
Brand new drama here on BBC4, and a quintessentially English writer despised as a traitor. Tim Pigott-Smith stars in Woodhouse in Exile next. Then an intimate portrait of architect John Portman, a life in building at 10:25.